My mother spent 15 years faking suicide attempts whenever I tried to leave the house. When I finally walked out, during her latest drowning, the police called to say she'd been caught filing false emergency reports. Then she discovered she had real diabetes and turned her actual illness into the ultimate weapon. My mother is a professional victim. Ever since Dad left when I was 8, she's had this twisted way of keeping me and my sister Amy under her control. The first time I tried to go to a friend's birthday party, she locked herself in the bathroom with a bottle of pills. "Go ahead, have fun while your mother dies alone," she screamed through the door. I spent the night begging her to come out instead of going to the party. That was just the beginning. By the time I hit middle school, she had a whole routine. If I got anything less than an A, she'd stand on the balcony threatening to jump. If Amy wanted to join soccer, Mom would hold a knife to her wrist. "You want to abandon me for some stupid game? Fine. You won't have a mother to abandon anymore." The worst part was she knew exactly when to escalate. Parent-teacher conferences were her favorite. She'd time her breakdowns for exactly when I was supposed to leave. Once I tried to go anyway, telling her I'd be back in an hour. I found her in the bathtub fully clothed with the hairdryer plugged in next to her when I came home. She was fine, just sitting there waiting for me to find her. I never made it to another school event. Amy figured out the game early. She was only 10 when she started recording Mom's threats on her phone. "She's not actually going to do it," Amy would whisper to me at night. "She just wants us to stay." But I couldn't risk it. What if the one time I called her bluff was the time she meant it? So I stayed. I turned down sleepovers, quit the school play, stopped talking to friends who asked too many questions. My whole life became managing Mom's moods. I learned to read her face like a bomb technician reads wires. Twitch in her left eye meant I better cancel my plans. Pursed lips meant she was about to have a spell. Amy went the opposite direction. By 14, she was sneaking out windows and lying about where she was going. When Mom found out Amy had a boyfriend, she swallowed a handful of Tylenol in front of us. We spent 6 hours in the emergency room while she got her stomach pumped. The nurses knew her by name. "You're calling me," Mom would say every morning. "Both of you are literally calling your mother." She'd clutch her chest and stagger around the kitchen. My heart can't take this betrayal. I started doing everything for her. I cooked, cleaned, paid bills with her credit cards. I scheduled her doctor appointments and drove her everywhere even though I only had a learner's permit. My grades tanked because I missed so much school taking care of her. Meanwhile, Amy was basically living at her boyfriend Derek's house. She'd come home once a week, usually when Mom threatened to drink bleach or drive into traffic. "She's manipulating you," Amy would tell me. "This isn't love, it's abuse." But I couldn't see it. When I got accepted to college 2 hours away, Mom took every med in the medicine cabinet. I found her on the kitchen floor with foam coming out of her mouth. The paramedics brought her back, and I deferred enrollment. "How could you even think about leaving me?" she sobbed from the hospital bed. "I'm your mother. I gave you life." That's when she started making me sign things. Actual contracts she'd write up saying I promised never to leave her. She'd threaten to show them to people, say I was legally bound to take care of her. I signed them all. What else could I do? She'd already proven she'd go through with her threats. Amy left for good when she turned 18, just packed a bag and walked out while Mom screamed about finding her body in the morning. Mom didn't die. She just transferred everything to me. Now if I was 5 minutes late from work, she'd be in the garage with the car running. If I mentioned maybe getting my own apartment, she'd fill the bathtub and hold her head underwater until I promised to stay. I was 23 and hadn't been on a single date. My boss asked why I couldn't work late, and I made up excuses. Friends stopped inviting me places because I always canceled last minute. Mom had made herself my whole world by threatening to leave it. The breaking point almost came when my company offered me a promotion. Regional manager, but I'd have to travel 1 week per month. The salary would have changed my life. When I mentioned it at dinner, Mom stopped eating. She walked to the window and started opening it. "I'll jump right now," she said calmly. "Before you even leave for your first trip, I'll be splattered on the sidewalk." I called my boss the next morning and turned it down. Told him I had family obligations. He never offered me another promotion. Then last week, Amy called. She was getting married. She wanted me to be her maid of honor. When I told Mom, she went straight for the kitchen knives. "23 years I've sacrificed for you ungrateful brats," she wailed. "Go to your sister's wedding. Dance on my grave." I snapped. Something in me finally broke. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. Mom ran to the bathroom and locked it. I heard the water running, heard her saying she was going to drown herself. I kept walking, got in my car, drove to Amy's apartment where her fiancé Derek answered the door. Mom called 17 times. I didn't answer. Amy held me while I sobbed and shook, terrified I'd just called my mother. Then the 18th call came, but it wasn't Mom. It was the police. The officer's voice was calm, but serious. "Is this the daughter of Margaret Thompson? We need you to come down to the station. Your mother is here, and there's been an incident." My legs gave out. Derek caught me before I hit the floor. Amy grabbed the phone from my shaking hands. I watched her face as she listened, asked questions, nodded. The room spun around me. This was it. I'd finally done it. I'd finally called her. Amy hung up and knelt beside me. "She's alive. She's fine. But we need to go to the station." The drive was a blur. Derek drove while Amy held my hand in the back seat. I couldn't stop shaking. Every red light felt like an eternity. My mind raced through all the times I'd stayed, all the parties I'd missed, all the opportunities I'd turned down. And for what? I'd left anyway, and now she was gone. The police station smelled like burnt coffee and floor cleaner. An officer led us to a small room where my mother sat wrapped in a blanket, mascara streaking down her face. She looked up when we entered, and her expression shifted from pitiful to furious in an instant. "There she is," she spat. "My murderer of a daughter." The officer cleared his throat. "Ma'am, as I explained, filing a false report is a serious offense." "False report?" I looked between them, confused. "Your mother called 911 claiming she was dying," the officer explained. "Said you'd abandoned her and she'd taken pills. When paramedics arrived, she was fine. No pills in her system. She admitted she'd lied to get you to come home." My mother's face crumpled. "She left me. My own daughter left me to die die alone. Ma'am, you weren't dying, the officer said patiently. You wasted emergency resources. We could charge you for this. Amy stepped forward. We're not pressing charges. We just want to take her home. But I couldn't move. Something had shifted inside me. All those years of terror, of racing home, of canceled plans and lost opportunities, all for lies. Every single time had been a lie. No, I said quietly. Everyone turned to look at me. I'm not taking her home. I'm done. My mother lunged at me, but the officer stepped between us. You ungrateful brat. I gave you everything. I sacrificed my whole life for you. You sacrificed my life, I said, my voice stronger now. Not yours. Mine. We left her there. The officer said they'd release her once she calmed down. Amy drove us back to her apartment, where I collapsed on the couch and slept for 14 hours straight. I woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of my phone buzzing. 43 missed calls, all from her. I deleted them without listening. Amy sat down beside me with 2 mugs. How are you feeling? Free, I said, then immediately felt guilty. Is that horrible? Number, it's about time. Derek made breakfast while Amy helped me look for apartments on her laptop. I'd been saving money for years, secretly, in an account my mother didn't know about. Enough for a deposit and a few months' rent. This one's nice. Amy pointed to a studio downtown, close to your work. My phone rang again. This time it was our neighbor, Mrs. Chen. I almost didn't answer, but Amy nodded encouragingly. Mrs. Chen's voice was worried. Your mother's been banging on my door all morning. Says you've kidnapped her medication and she needs to get into your room. I didn't let her in, but she's making quite a scene. I thanked her and hung up. My mother didn't take medication. This was just another manipulation. We should get your stuff, Derek said, before she does something to it. We drove to the house while she was at her weekly hair appointment. I'd memorized her schedule after years of planning my life around it. We had exactly 2 hours. My room looked like a shrine to captivity. No posters, no personal touches, just a bed, a dresser, and a desk covered in the contracts she'd made me sign. I grabbed a garbage bag and started throwing them in. Look at this one. Amy held up a paper. I promised to never leave my mother for more than 3 hours at a time. She tore it in half. These aren't legal, you know. These are just crazy. We packed my clothes, my laptop, the few books I'd hidden under my bed. It all fit in 3 boxes. 23 years in 3 boxes. As we loaded the car, I saw her coming up the street. She must have left her appointment early. My hands started shaking again. Get in the car, Derek said calmly. I'll handle this. But I stood my ground. I needed to face her. She ran toward us, hair half done, foils still in. What are you doing? You can't leave. You promised. I'm leaving, Mom. Well, nothing says healthy mother-daughter relationship like signing contracts promising not to leave for more than 3 hours. I'm surprised she didn't make her wear an ankle monitor. I'm getting my own place. I'll die without you. You know I will. No, you won't. The words came out steady and sure. You've been pretending to die my whole life. I'm done falling for it. She clutched her chest, staggered dramatically. A few neighbors came out to watch. She'd always been careful to keep her performances private before. This public display was new. My heart! I'm having a heart attack. Mrs. Chen called out from her porch. Should I call an ambulance, Margaret? My mother straightened up immediately. No ambulance. Of course not, because then they'd find out she was lying. Again. We drove away while she stood in the street screaming about betrayal and abandonment. I didn't look back. Amy's couch became my home for the next week while I searched for apartments. My phone never stopped ringing. When I blocked her number, she started calling from different phones. The neighbors, her hairdresser, numbers I didn't recognize. The messages escalated. First came the guilt. I'm your mother. I changed your diapers. I stayed up when you were sick. Then the threats. I'm changing my will. You're getting nothing. Then the bargaining. Come home and we'll forget this happened. I'll give you more freedom. I didn't respond to any of them. On the 4th day, she showed up at my work. I was filing reports when I heard the commotion at reception. I need to see my daughter. It's a family emergency. My boss, Mr. Patterson, appeared at my desk. There's a woman here claiming to be your mother. Says it's life or death. It always was with her. I stood up, smoothed my skirt, and walked to the lobby. She looked terrible. Hair unwashed, clothes wrinkled. She'd clearly been hoping I'd cave by now. We need to talk, she hissed. We're talking now. Privately. Number. I kept my voice professional. If you have something to say it here. She glanced around at my curious coworkers. You're killing me. Is that what you want to hear? My blood pressure is through the roof. I can't sleep. I can't eat. That sounds like something you should discuss with your doctor. Her face went red. I am your mother, and I'm an adult who's made the decision to live independently. Please leave before I have to call security. She started crying then, big, theatrical sobs, but my coworkers had seen her performance at reception. No one was buying it. Security escorted her out. Mr. Patterson called me into his office afterward. I'm so sorry, I started, but he held up a hand. I had a mother like that, he said quietly. Took me 40 years to break free. Good for you for doing it now. He offered me the regional manager position again. Said it was still available if I wanted it. I accepted on the spot. That night, Amy and Derek took me out to celebrate. We went to a little Italian place downtown. I kept checking the door, expecting her to burst in. Old habits. She called me today, Amy said over dessert. Wanted me to talk sense into you. What did you say? That you were the sensible one for finally leaving. Amy smiled. She hung up on me. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Hello, this is Dr. Morrison from St. Mary's Hospital. I'm calling about Margaret Thompson. She's listed you as her emergency contact. My heart stopped. This was it. She'd finally done something real. She's been admitted for observation, the doctor continued. She came in claiming chest pains, but all our tests came back normal. However, she's refusing to leave. Says she'll hurt herself if we discharge her. I closed my eyes. Is she actually in danger? Medically? Number? But we have to take all threats seriously. Can you come down? I wanted to say no. Every fiber of my being screamed to hang up, but I went. Amy and Derek came with me. We found her in a hospital bed, hooked up to monitors she didn't need. She perked up when she saw me. Oh, thank God. I knew you'd come. I knew you still cared. I came to tell the doctors the truth, I said. You've been doing this for 15 years. False emergencies, fake sewer slide attempts. It's all manipulation. Her face went dark. How dare you? The doctor pulled me aside. Is this true? I showed him my phone. Screenshots of texts threatening self-harm. Voicemails of her claiming to be dying. Photos Amy had taken over the years of her attempts that were clearly staged. She needs psychological help, I said. Not medical. And I can't be the one to give it to her anymore. They kept her for psychiatric evaluation. I signed papers removing myself as her emergency contact. Put down a cousin who lived 2 states away instead. As we left, she called out one more time. You'll regret this. When I'm gone, you'll have to live with the guilt. But I didn't feel guilty anymore. I felt free. The apartment I found was small but perfect. Top floor of an old building with big windows and hardwood floors. The first night there, I sat on the floor eating takeout and cried. Not from sadness, but from relief. Amy helped me decorate. We hung curtains, bought plants, picked out throw pillows. Every choice was mine. No one threatened to die if I chose the wrong color. Work got better too. Without the constant anxiety of rushing home, I could focus, take on extra projects, stay late when needed. My performance reviews improved dramatically. 3 weeks into my new life, she found my address. I don't know how. Maybe she followed Amy, maybe she hired someone, but I came home to find her sitting on my doorstep. We need to talk, she said. No, we don't. I stepped around her to unlock my door. She grabbed my ankle, actually grabbed it, like a child. Please, just 5 minutes. I shook her off. You need to leave or I'm calling the police. I'm your mother. That doesn't give you the right to stalk me. She stood up, brushed off her pants. Fine, but don't come crying to me when your life falls apart. You think you're so independent? You can't even boil water without me. I almost laughed. I'd been cooking for both of us since I was 12. She left, but not before slipping a letter under my door. 20 pages, front and back, detailing every sacrifice she'd ever made, every diaper changed, every meal cooked. At the bottom, a bill. An actual itemized bill for raising me. Total, $487,392. I showed it to Amy. We laughed until we cried. She charged you for birthday presents, Amy pointed out, with interest. The letters kept coming, sometimes through the mail, sometimes under my door. I stopped reading them, started a file instead, in case I ever needed a restraining order. Then one day they stopped. A whole week went by without a call, a text, a letter. I should have been relieved, but it made me nervous. This wasn't like her. Amy called on a Tuesday. Have you heard from Mom? Not in a week. You? Same. I'm worried she's planning something big. She was right. That weekend was Amy's wedding shower. Small, just close friends and family at a restaurant downtown. We'd specifically not invited our mother, but I kept watching the door anyway. Halfway through lunch, Amy's future mother-in-law pulled me aside. There's a woman outside claiming to be Amy's mother. She says there's been a terrible mistake with the invitations. My stomach dropped. Of course she'd found out. I went outside. She stood there in a mother-of-the-bride dress she must have bought for the occasion. Full makeup, hair done, holding a wrapped gift. You didn't think you could exclude me from my own daughter's wedding events? You weren't invited for a reason. I'm her mother. I have rights. No, you have a history of making everything about you. Amy doesn't want you here. Her face crumpled. For a moment, I saw real pain there. Then it hardened again. I'll ruin it, she said quietly. If I can't be there, I'll ruin the whole thing. I'll show up at the church. I'll object during the ceremony. I'll make such a scene. That's all anyone will remember. Then we'll have you removed. Try it. I'll claim elder abuse. I'll tell everyone how my daughters abandoned me, how you left me to die. I looked at her, really looked at her. She seemed smaller somehow, older. All those years of fake emergencies had taken a toll. Do what you need to do, I said finally, but I'm done negotiating with you. I went back inside, told Amy what happened. She just shrugged. Let her try. Derek's brothers are bouncers. They've already volunteered for mom duty at the wedding. The shower continued without incident. We ate cake. Amy opened gifts. Everyone had a good time. Our mother never came inside, but she didn't give up. The next morning, I woke to pounding on Amy's apartment door. Derek checked the peephole and shook his head. Mom stood in the hallway, holding what looked like medical papers. We stayed silent until she left, but not before she slipped an envelope under the door. Inside were lab results, showing dangerously high blood pressure, and a doctor's note recommending immediate lifestyle changes. The papers looked authentic, but I'd learned not to trust anything from her. Amy called the clinic listed on the letterhead. They'd never heard of Margaret Thompson. Work became my sanctuary, but even that didn't last. 3 days after the shower, our receptionist handed me a package. No return address, but I recognized Mom's handwriting. Inside were photos of me from the past week, leaving Amy's apartment, walking into work, buying groceries. Each photo had a note on the back. A mother always watches over her children. You can't hide from family. I know where you are every moment. My hands trembled as I showed them to Mr. Patterson. He immediately called building security and had them review the footage. They found her in the parking garage, waiting for hours with a camera. Security banned her from the property, but she'd already made her point. She could find me anywhere. The regional manager position required training in another city. Her mom actually itemized a bill for raising her. That's such a strange way to think about being a parent. Like it's some kind of business deal where you expect to get paid back for doing basic parent stuff. I'd be gone for 2 weeks, staying in a company-provided hotel. Part of me worried about leaving, but Amy insisted I go. She and Derek would handle anything that came up. I made it 3 days into training before the hotel called my room. A woman claiming to be my mother had collapsed in the lobby. She was refusing medical attention, insisting she needed her daughter. I explained the situation to hotel security. They found her perfectly healthy, demanding my room number. When they refused, she lay down on the lobby floor and wouldn't move until police arrived. My training coordinator pulled me aside the next day. Corporate had received multiple calls from a woman claiming I'd stolen money from her, that I was mentally unstable, that I'd threatened her life. Fortunately, Mr. Patterson had already briefed them about my situation. They installed extra security measures at the training facility and my hotel. I threw myself into the work, determined not to let her derail this opportunity. The training was intensive. Financial systems, team management, regional logistics. For the first time in years, I went whole hours without thinking about her. On day 10, I returned to my hotel room to find maintenance replacing the lock. Someone had tried to break in while I was at training. Nothing was missing, but my clothes had been moved, my toiletries rearranged. A note on my pillow read, "A mother's love finds a way." Hotel security reviewed the footage. A woman matching Mom's description had convinced a new desk clerk she'd locked herself out of her daughter's room. She'd shown a photo of us together, claimed I was expecting her. The clerk, trying to be helpful, had given her a key. I spent my last night in that hotel room barricading the door with furniture, jumping at every sound in the hallway. When I finally returned home, I was exhausted, but proud. I'd completed the training. I'd earned the promotion. I hadn't let her win. Amy picked me up from the airport. During the drive, she filled me in on what I'd missed. Mom had shown up at Derek's parents' house, introducing herself as the mother of the bride. She'd cried about being excluded from wedding planning, painted herself as a victim of cruel daughters. Derek's mother, a kind woman who didn't know the full story, had almost invited her to help with decorations before Derek intervened. She'd also called every vendor Amy had booked. The caterer, the florist, the DJ, all received calls from a concerned mother wanting to help with her daughter's wedding. Some she tried to convince to cancel, claiming the wedding was off. Others she attempted to change orders with, adding items Amy hadn't requested. Fortunately, Amy had password protected all her vendor accounts after the shower incident. My new apartment was ready. I'd signed the lease before leaving for training, and Amy had overseen the move while I was gone. Walking in felt surreal. My own space, my own life. The windows faced east, filling the room with morning light. I'd never had a room with so much natural light. Mom always kept our curtains drawn. That first night alone, I triple-checked the locks and tested the building's security system. The super had already been briefed about my situation after Mom tried to convince him she needed access to her daughter's apartment for a medical emergency. He'd asked for proof of emergency, and she'd stormed off. Work under the new position was demanding but fulfilling. I managed accounts across 3 states, traveling to different offices, building relationships with regional teams. The travel terrified me at first. What if something happened while I was gone? But each successful trip built my confidence. Mom's tactics evolved. She couldn't reach me directly, so she went after everyone around me. She called my company's HR department, claiming I'd stolen from her to fund my lifestyle. When they investigated and found no merit, she called corporate headquarters, then individual board members whose names she found online. Each time she had a different story: elder abuse, theft, abandonment. The company stood by me, but I felt the weight of it. Coworkers looked at me differently, wondering about the drama I'd brought to their workplace. I worked twice as hard, stayed twice as late, proving I was worth the trouble. Amy's wedding planning intensified. Dress fittings, cake tastings, venue walkthroughs. I attended everything I could, hyper-vigilant for Mom's presence. She appeared at the dress shop, claiming she'd been accidentally left off the appointment list. The shop owner, briefed in advance, politely asked her to leave. She stood outside for 2 hours, watching through the window as Amy tried on dresses. The manipulation grew more creative. Packages arrived at my apartment, family photo albums with my face cut out of every picture, my childhood belongings with notes about how much she'd sacrificed to buy them. Once, a food delivery I hadn't ordered showed up. The receipt said it was from your loving mother who knows you're not eating properly. I donated the food to my elderly neighbor and threw away the photos. Each package went into my growing documentation file. Amy suggested I get a restraining order, but I hesitated. Court meant seeing her, meant giving her a stage for her performance. My breaking point came during a regional meeting in Phoenix. I was presenting quarterly projections when my phone exploded with texts. Mom had checked herself into a psychiatric facility, listing me as her emergency contact. She'd told them I'd driven her to attempt sewer slide, that she needed immediate intervention. I excused myself from the meeting to handle the crisis. The facility's doctor listened patiently as I explained the pattern, the history, the manipulation. They'd already grown suspicious when she'd refused to discuss any actual mental health symptoms, insisting they just needed to call her daughter. They released her that evening, but the damage was done. I'd missed half the regional meeting, had to explain to my team why I'd disappeared during my own presentation. That night in my hotel room, I finally broke down. She was never going to stop. No matter how far I ran, how strong I became, she'd always find a way to insert herself into my life. Amy talked me through it over video call. The wedding was in 6 weeks. We'd handle whatever Mom threw at us together. Derek's brothers had a whole security plan for the ceremony. I wasn't alone in this. Returning home, I found an eviction notice on my door. My landlord had received multiple complaints about loud noises, strange smells, suspicious visitors to my apartment, all filed by anonymous callers during times I could prove I was out of town. The landlord believed me, but the management company wanted to avoid drama. I had 30 days to find a new place. The search felt impossible. Every apartment I applied for somehow received calls about my situation. References I'd never provided were contacted with warnings about my manipulative mother. One landlord told me directly he couldn't risk that kind of disruption to his building. Amy and Derek offered their couch again, but I refused. I wouldn't let Mom drive me from my independence. I finally found a place through a coworker's friend, someone who understood difficult family situations. The building had better security, key fob entry, cameras on every floor, a doorman who took his job seriously. Moving day arrived with no sign of her. That worried me more than her presence would have. Amy helped me pack, both of us checking windows, listening for footsteps in the hall. Nothing. The silence felt ominous. My new apartment was smaller but safer. 4th floor, no fire escape access, one way in or out. I installed extra locks, a security camera, a doorbell that recorded video. Perhaps paranoid, but I'd learned to trust my instincts. Work Work travel increased as I settled into the role. Each trip got easier. I'd check in with Amy daily, but stopped expecting crisis calls. Mom had gone quiet for 3 weeks, the longest stretch since I'd left. Then Amy called during a business dinner in Denver. Mom had been hospitalized. Real hospitalization this time. She'd collapsed at the grocery store, and tests showed she'd been neglecting her diabetes for months. Her blood sugar was dangerously high. She was refusing treatment unless her daughters came to see her. I stared at my half-eaten steak, appetite gone. Of course she had diabetes. Of course she'd been ignoring it. She'd found the one thing that could actually cull her and weaponized it. Amy was torn. This could be real, or it could be another manipulation. We agreed she'd go to the hospital, assess the situation. I'd fly back if it was truly serious. An hour later, Amy called back. Mom was indeed sick, but stable. The doctors had her on insulin, monitoring her levels. She'd be fine if she followed treatment. When Amy walked in, Mom had smiled triumphantly. She'd found a real illness to exploit. She could now hurt herself simply by skipping medication or eating poorly. The perfect weapon. I finished my business trip, but the weight of this new development hung over everything. She'd turned her own body into a hostage. How could I fight that? Back home, I met with Amy to strategize. The wedding was in 2 weeks. Mom knew the date, the venue, probably every detail despite our precautions. She'd likely use her illness as leverage to attend. We couldn't let her ruin Amy's day, but we also couldn't ignore genuine medical needs. Derek suggested hiring a nurse to be on standby at the wedding. If Mom showed up claiming medical distress, a professional could assess her. It felt extreme, but what about this situation wasn't? The week before the wedding, gifts started arriving at Amy's apartment. Not wedding gifts, guilt gifts. Mom sent Amy's childhood toys, baby clothes, handmade quilts from Amy's infancy. Each item came with a note about the memories attached, the love sewn into every stitch. Amy donated them all to charity, but I saw how it affected her. Mom turned her diabetes into a weapon. That's definitely a new level of commitment to the guilt trip game. Most people just use regular old disappointment like normal parents. Even knowing the manipulation, those memories still had power. My hotel reservation for the wedding weekend was mysteriously canceled. When I called, they said I'd canceled it myself the day before. I hadn't. I booked another room at a different hotel, using a fake name this time. 3 days before the wedding, Mom escalated. She called Amy's venue claiming to be me, trying to cancel the entire event. Fortunately, Amy had warned them this might happen. They required the password Amy had set up. Mom didn't have it. She then called all the guests she could find numbers for, telling them the wedding was off due to family emergency. Amy and Derek spent an entire day calling everyone, confirming the wedding was still on. Some guests were confused, others annoyed. The stress showed on Amy's face. The night before the wedding, I stayed with Amy. We did face masks, painted our nails, tried to pretend everything was normal. Neither of us slept well. Every car door outside made us jump. Every footstep in the hall sent our hearts racing. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and bright. Derek's brothers, Ben and Marcus, arrived early to secure the venue. They were massive men who worked nightclub security on weekends. They took their assignment seriously, checking every entrance, briefing the venue staff. Amy looked radiant in her dress. As I helped her with her veil, she grabbed my hand. We didn't need words. We'd survived this far. We'd survived today. The guests arrived without incident. The ceremony space filled with friends, Derek's family, distant relatives who'd confirmed directly with Amy that the wedding was real. No sign of Mom. As the music started and I walked down the aisle as maid of honor, I scanned the crowd. Every face was familiar, invited, supposed to be there. Maybe she'd actually given up. Maybe the brothers at the door had deterred her. Maybe we'd actually won. The ceremony was beautiful. Amy and Derek exchanged vows they'd written themselves, promises about building a life together, supporting each other through difficult times. I thought about my own journey, how far I'd come from that terrified girl begging her mother to unlock the bathroom door. As the officiant asked if anyone objected, the room held its breath. Silence. Nothing. He continued, pronouncing them husband and wife. The room erupted in cheers. We made it through photos, through the receiving line, through the cocktail hour. Ben and Marcus reported no attempts at entry. I started to relax, actually enjoying my sister's wedding. Then, during dinner, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. A photo of Mom in a hospital bed, hooked to machines. The message read, "Your mother is dying alone while you party. The nurses say she's been calling for you. This is what you wanted, isn't it?" My hand shook. Amy noticed, read the message over my shoulder. She took my phone, showed it to Derek. He whispered to his brothers. Ben stepped outside to make calls. 20 minutes later, he returned with information. Mom was indeed at the hospital, but she'd checked herself in claiming chest pains. All tests were normal. She was using a friend's phone to contact me, probably the woman sitting beside her bed taking photos. Amy squeezed my hand. We'd deal with it tomorrow. Tonight was about celebration, not manipulation. The rest of the reception blurred by. Speeches, dancing, cake cutting. I gave my maid of honor toast, talking about Amy's strength, her ability to see through facades, her courage in building her own life. I didn't mention Mom, but everyone who knew our story understood. As the night wound down, I helped Amy bustle her dress for more dancing. She pulled me aside, pressing something into my hand. A key. What's this? Derek and I talked. We want you to house sit while we're on our honeymoon. 2 weeks. Mom doesn't know where we live exactly, just the building. You'll be safer there. I hugged her tight, careful not to smudge her makeup. Even on her wedding day, she was protecting me. The next morning, I moved into Amy and Derek's apartment temporarily. They'd left for Hawaii, and I had the place to myself. It felt strange being in their space, but also safe. Mom couldn't manipulate what she couldn't find. Those 2 weeks passed peacefully. I worked, visited my own apartment to check mail, kept my routines. Mom stayed in the hospital for 3 days before checking herself out. She called my work twice, but they'd stopped putting her through. When Amy and Derek returned, tanned and happy, we had a family meeting. Things couldn't continue like this. Mom's diabetes gave her a new weapon, but it also also meant she needed consistent care. We couldn't provide it. She'd proven that our presence only enabled her manipulation. We researched assisted living facilities, ones that specialized in patients with both medical and psychological needs. It felt like betrayal, but what else could we do? She needed professional help we couldn't give. The next time Mom was hospitalized, 4 days after Amy's return, we were ready. While she was admitted, we met with a social worker. We explained the situation, the years of manipulation, the current danger she posed to herself. The social worker had seen similar cases. She understood. They kept Mom for psychological evaluation this time. Without us rushing to her bedside, her tactics became more obvious to the staff. She'd refuse medication until someone called her daughters. She'd claim suicidal thoughts, then retract them once we were contacted. The pattern was clear to professionals who weren't emotionally invested. The evaluation recommended intensive outpatient therapy and a structured living environment. Mom refused both. She checked herself out against medical advice, but now there was a paper trail. Documentation of her refusal to accept help. She showed up at my work the next day, looking haggard. Security stopped her at the door, but I could see her through the glass. She'd lost weight, her clothes hung loose. The diabetes was taking its toll. For a moment, my resolve wavered. Then I remembered all the times she'd used her body as a weapon against us. I had security tell her about the assisted living options we'd researched. If she wanted our help, it would be on our terms. Professional care, therapy, boundaries. She left without responding. That night, she called from a different hospital. Another collapse, this time at a restaurant. Her blood sugar had spiked dangerously. They needed emergency contact information. I gave them the social worker's number. Amy and I visited together the next day, the social worker present. Mom looked small in the hospital bed, but her eyes blazed when she saw us. We laid out the options: assisted living with regular visits, or continuing this cycle alone. We wouldn't come running anymore. We wouldn't enable her self-destruction, but we would support her getting real help. She raged, accused us of elder abuse, of abandonment, of cruelty. The social worker documented everything. When Mom threatened to kill herself if we left, the social worker called for a psychiatric hold. Mom backtracked immediately, but it was too late. The professional had seen what we'd dealt with for years. They kept her for 72 hours. During that time, Amy and I met with lawyers, social workers, medical professionals. We learned about boundaries, about enabling, about the difference between helping and hurting. We weren't abandoning her. We were refusing to participate in her self-destruction. When she was released, she had two choices: accept the assisted living placement with therapy requirements, or manage her own care independently. No more emergency calls, no more guilt trips, no more using her illness as manipulation. She chose independence, of course, swore she didn't need us, didn't need anyone. The social worker gave her resources: diabetes management programs, therapy options, support groups. Mom threw the pamphlets in the trash on her way out. We didn't hear from her for a month, the longest silence yet. I'd check with the hospitals sometimes, making sure she wasn't there. Amy drove by the house once, saw her car in the driveway. She was alive, managing somehow. I threw myself into work, into building my life. The regional position came with opportunities, conferences, networking events, advancement possibilities. I started dating for the first time, tentatively, carefully. I joined a support group for adults with manipulative parents. I wasn't alone in this experience. Amy and Derek settled into married life. Sunday dinners at their place became tradition. We'd cook together, watch movies, play board games, normal family activities we'd never had growing up. The silence stretched into 6 weeks. I'd grown used to checking my phone constantly, bracing for the next crisis. Now the quiet felt wrong. Amy and I exchanged worried texts daily, both sensing something building. The answer came through Mrs. Chen. She called me at work, voice hushed and concerned. Mom had been bringing different people to the house: contractors, real estate agents, even a moving company. The activity seemed frantic, desperate. I left work early and drove past the house. A for sale sign stood in the front yard. My childhood home, the place she'd trapped us in for so many years, was on the market. Through the window, I could see boxes stacked in the living room. Amy met me at a coffee shop nearby. We sat in silence, processing this development. Mom selling the house meant something. Either she was planning something massive, or she'd finally accepted our boundaries. Neither option felt safe. The realtor's website showed the listing. The photos made the house look normal, even inviting. You'd never know the psychological warfare that had played out in those rooms. The asking price was below market value. She wanted a quick sale. 3 days later, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mom checking herself into hospitals for chest pains that test normal. I'm curious what goes through someone's mind when they plan something like that. Does she sit there calculating which symptoms will get the most attention? A man's voice, professional and cautious, introduced himself as Mom's new landlord. She'd listed me as a reference on her rental application. I told him the truth. She was my mother, but we were estranged due to her behavior. I couldn't recommend her as a tenant. He thanked me for my honesty and hung up. An hour later, he called back. She'd provided 3 other references, all fake numbers that led nowhere. He'd decided not to rent to her. Mom's next attempt came through Amy's work. She'd applied for a job at the dental office where Amy was a hygienist, using her maiden name so they wouldn't make the connection immediately. Amy's boss mentioned the new applicant during a staff meeting, wondering if Amy knew a Margaret Williams who'd listed similar previous addresses. Amy pulled her boss aside after the meeting, explaining the situation. The application went straight to the rejection pile, but the message was clear. Mom was trying to insert herself back into our lives through any avenue possible. The house sold within 2 weeks. I found out through public records, not from her. The new owners were a young family with twins. I hoped they'd fill those rooms with better memories. Mom's new address appeared on a forwarding label when a piece of her mail accidentally came to my apartment. She'd moved to a small complex on the other side of town, the kind with weekly rentals and no background checks, the kind of place people went when they were running out of options. Work kept me traveling constantly constantly. Each trip felt like freedom. I was building something of my own, succeeding on my own merits. My team respected me. My presentations went smoothly. I was good at this job, better than I'd ever imagined I could be. During a conference in Seattle, I met someone. Ben worked for a partner company, and we ended up talking during a break between sessions. He was funny, kind, didn't push when I mentioned my family situation was complicated. We exchanged numbers, started texting. It felt strange, allowing someone new into my life. Amy called while I was at the airport heading home. Mom had been spotted at the grocery store near their apartment, not shopping, just sitting in her car in the parking lot, watching people come and go. When store security approached, she drove away, but she came back the next day, and the next. Derek installed new security cameras around their building. The footage showed Mom driving by at odd hours, sometimes parking across the street for hours. She never approached, never tried to make contact, just watched. The stalking escalated. She started showing up at places we'd mentioned on social media, restaurants where Amy checked in, the gym where I'd posted a photo, always watching from a distance, never approaching. It felt like psychological warfare, her way of saying she was still there, still watching, still waiting. I stopped posting online. Amy made her accounts private, but Mom had already mapped our routines. She knew where we worked, where we lived, where we spent our time. The knowledge sat heavy on both of us. Then came the packages. Not to our homes. She knew we'd refuse those. Instead, they went to our workplaces, our friends, even Derek's parents. Photo albums showing happy family memories before everything went wrong. Letters painting her as a devoted mother abandoned by cruel children. Some people believed her. Most didn't. But the doubt she planted was another form of manipulation. My breaking point came during Amy's birthday dinner. We'd chosen a restaurant we'd never been to before. Made the reservation under Derek's name. Somehow, she still found us. I saw her through the window, standing across the street, just watching. When I looked again, she was gone. That night, I made a decision. I called the social worker we'd met at the hospital, explained the escalation, the stalking, the psychological harassment. She listened, took notes, promised to look into options. What she found wasn't encouraging. Without direct threats or physical violence, legal options were limited. Mom was careful. She never came close enough for a restraining order, never made explicit threats. She was playing a long game, wearing us down through presence alone. Amy and Derek decided to move. They found a house in a gated community 40 minutes away, somewhere Mom couldn't lurk outside. The move felt like letting her win, but Amy's peace of mind mattered more than pride. I helped them pack, both of us constantly checking windows. On moving day, we took separate cars, different routes, making sure we weren't followed. It felt like something out of a movie, except this was our real life. The new house was beautiful. 2 stories, a big backyard, room for the family Amy and Derek were planning. As we unpacked boxes, Amy seemed lighter. The distance and security gave her space to breathe. My own lease was up in 3 months. I started looking at apartments in other parts of the city, places Mom wouldn't think to look. The constant vigilance exhausted me, but what choice did I have? Work offered a solution. The company was opening a new regional office 2 states away. They needed someone to help set it up, run it for the first year. It meant leaving everything I'd built here, but also leaving her reach. I accepted immediately. Telling Amy was hard. We'd just found our relationship as adults, and now I was leaving. But she understood. Sometimes distance was the only way to find peace. We promised weekly video calls, visits every few months. It wasn't abandonment, it was self-preservation. I didn't tell anyone else about the move. Packed slowly, secretly. Hired movers for a weekday when Mom would likely be elsewhere. Even the building manager only found out when I turned in my keys. The drive to my new city took 12 hours. I stopped only for gas, checking mirrors constantly. No one followed. As I crossed the state line, something in my chest loosened. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. The new apartment was corporate housing, temporary, but secure. I threw myself into setting up the office, hiring staff, building something from scratch. The work consumed me in the best way. Days passed without thinking about her. Amy called with updates. Mom had discovered they'd moved when she showed up at their old apartment. She'd caused a scene, demanding the new tenants tell her where her daughter went. Police were called. She left before they arrived. My absence took longer to notice. She showed up at my old job, demanding to see me. Mr. Patterson personally told her I no longer worked there. She tried my old apartment next, then called every contact she could find. No one knew where I'd gone because I hadn't told them. The first few months in the new city felt like witness protection, even though I'd done nothing wrong. I used a different name at coffee shops, paid cash when possible, stayed off social media entirely. Slowly, I started to relax. She didn't know where I was. She couldn't find me. Work thrived under my leadership. The new office exceeded projections within 6 months. I built a good team, people who respected boundaries and didn't pry into why I never mentioned family. Ben and I kept texting, then talking, then video chatting. He understood why I couldn't say where I was yet. Amy's first pregnancy announcement came during one of our video calls. She glowed with happiness, Derek beaming beside her. They'd waited to tell me in person, virtually at least. I cried happy tears, already planning my secret visits to meet my future niece or nephew. Mom found out about the pregnancy through distant relatives. Amy received dozens of packages, baby clothes, handmade blankets, toys Mom had saved from our childhood. Each came with letters about grandmother's rights, about how Amy was denying her grandchild a loving relationship. Amy donated everything, kept the letters for documentation. The baby arrived early, a perfect little girl named Sarah. I flew in secretly, staying at a hotel under a fake name. Holding my niece for the first time, I understood even more why Amy and I had to protect ourselves. This innocent child deserved better than the manipulation we'd endured. I extended my stay to help Amy adjust to motherhood. We developed a system. I'd visit monthly, always carefully, always secretly. Mom continued her packages and letters, but Amy had grown immune to the guilt. Sarah's safety came first. 6 months into my new life, Mom's letters found me. Not at my apartment or office. She didn't have those addresses. Instead, they came through my company's corporate headquarters, forwarded through official channels. She'd tracked down where I worked, though not where I lived. The letters were different now. Less manipulation, more rambling. She wrote about her health declining, her money running out, her loneliness. Part of me felt the old guilt rising. Then I remembered all the false emergencies, all the lies. I filed the letters away unread. Amy faced her own challenges. Mom had started calling hospitals when Sarah had her first cold, claiming to be a concerned grandmother who needed updates on her grandchild's condition. She'd learned Sarah's full name and birth date somehow. Amy had to password protect all of Sarah's medical information. The stalking resumed with new focus. Mom would sit outside Sarah's daycare, watching through the fence, never approaching, never violating any laws, just watching. The daycare increased security, but the psychological impact remained. Derek's solution was elegant. His brother Ben owned rental properties, including a house in a different school district. They did a quiet property swap. Officially, Amy and Derek still lived at their registered address, but actually resided elsewhere. Mom could watch an empty house all she wanted. My year commitment to the new office was ending. Corporate wanted me to stay, offered a permanent position with room for growth, but Ben had also been offered a transfer to my city. After a year of long-distance relationship building, we were ready to try something real. I signed the permanent contract. Ben accepted his transfer. For the first time, I was building a life completely separate from my past. Mom's letters still came occasionally, but they felt distant, like echoes from another life. Amy's second pregnancy brought new challenges. Mom had somehow gotten herself listed as an emergency contact at the hospital where Amy delivered. She showed up during labor, claiming grandmother's rights. Security removed her, but not before she'd caused a scene that stressed Amy during a vulnerable time. Baby James arrived healthy despite the drama. I flew in again, this time bringing Ben. Introducing him to Amy and Derek felt like worlds colliding, but good worlds, safe worlds. He understood why we lived the way we did. Mom's health truly declined this time. Not manipulation, actual consequences of years of neglecting her diabetes. She was hospitalized repeatedly, each time listing us as emergency contacts despite our removal requests. The hospitals called anyway, following protocol. We didn't go. The social worker checked on her condition, reported back. Mom needed consistent care, the kind we'd offered before. She still refused assisted living, still insisted she just needed her daughters. The cycle continued, but we'd stepped off the wheel. My work expanded to cover multiple regions. The travel increased, but I didn't mind. Each new city felt like freedom. Ben traveled with me sometimes, building his own career while supporting mine. We found an apartment together, built routines that had nothing to do with my past. Amy and Derek bought a larger house, still secret, still secure. Their family grew, but so did their precautions. Every school registration, every activity enrollment came with passwords and security measures. It was exhausting, but necessary. Mom's letters became less frequent. The last one I received was barely coherent, talking about plans that made no sense, people who didn't exist. Amy received similar ones. We compared them, saw the decline in handwriting, in logic. Whatever game she'd been playing was ending. The call came on a Tuesday, not from a hospital this time, but from her neighbor. Mom had been found unconscious in her apartment, diabetic coma. She was alive but in critical condition. The neighbor had called after finding our numbers in Mom's address book. Amy and I met at the hospital, not in her room. We weren't ready for that. But we met with her doctors, discussed her condition. Without consistent medication and monitoring, she'd done serious damage. Recovery was possible, but would require the kind of care she'd always refused. We made arrangements from a distance, found a facility that could handle her medical and psychological needs, used her house sale money to pay for it, set up a trust for her care, did everything daughters should do, except visit. She recovered slowly. The facility sent updates, which we read but didn't respond to. She was getting proper care, therapy, medication management, everything we'd tried to arrange before, she was finally receiving because she had no choice. Amy's children grew without knowing their grandmother. We showed them old photos sometimes, from before things went bad, told them age-appropriate stories about family being complicated. They accepted it the way children do, without the guilt we carried. My life with Ben flourished. We got engaged in a small ceremony Amy attended secretly. Mom wasn't invited, wasn't told. The wedding was tiny, perfect, ours. Amy stood as my maid of honor again, this time without fear of disruption. Work promotions came regularly. I was good at what I did, built strong teams, delivered results. The success felt earned, untainted by the chaos I'd left behind. Sometimes coworkers asked about family, and I'd mention Amy. The rest stayed private. Mom's facility called occasionally with updates. She was stable, participating in therapy, making progress. They suggested visits might help. We declined. Some bridges, once burned, couldn't be rebuilt. We'd ensured she was safe and cared for. That was enough. Years passed. Amy's children started school. I became a regional director. Ben and I bought a house. Life moved forward the way it should have all along. The hypervigilance faded, though never completely disappeared. Then came the letter from Mom's facility. She'd had a stroke. Minor, but it affected her memory. She kept asking for her daughters, but not us. Younger versions. Children who'd never left. The staff thought we should know. Amy and I discussed it over video chat, our own children playing in the background. The guilt was still there, would probably always be there, but so was the knowledge of what we'd survived, what we'd built despite her. We sent flowers to her room. No card, no names, just flowers to brighten her space. It felt like the right balance, acknowledging her humanity without reopening wounds. The facility stopped calling after that. We kept paying for her care, monitoring from a distance. She was safe, receiving help, no longer able to manipulate. We were free, building lives she couldn't touch. Sometimes I dreamed about her. Not nightmares anymore, just memories of before it all went wrong. The mother who'd made pancakes on Sunday mornings, who'd taught me to ride a bike. That person had existed existed once, before the manipulation took over. Amy felt it too. We'd talk about it during our visits, processing the complicated grief of losing someone who was still alive. Our therapist helped, as did the passage of time. The guilt faded to a manageable level, replaced by acceptance. My story wasn't unique. The support group taught me that. Lots of us had survived similar situations, built lives despite the chaos. We shared strategies, celebrated victories, held space for the complicated emotions. The last update came through the facility's routine report. Mom was doing well in their memory care unit. She no longer asked for us, content in a routine that didn't include manipulation or threats. The medication kept her stable. The therapy helped her process whatever she could remember. I filed the report with all the others. Proof that we'd done the right thing. Even when it felt wrong, she was cared for. We were free. Everyone was safe. That night, I cooked dinner for Ben. Later video called Amy to see the kids. Normal, peaceful activities that would have been impossible in the life Mom had tried to trap us in. We'd broken the cycle, built something better. The guilt would always exist in some form, but so would the knowledge that we'd chosen life over manipulation, health over sickness, freedom over control. And in the end, that choice had saved all of us, even her. Subscribe for more content on this channel. It makes me happy to see you guys comment on all the videos too.